My name is Jason Hasty, and I'm here with three very distinguished visitors to the Special Collections Libraries. Today is September 5th. We are in Athens, Georgia, with Dr. John Sweeney, who is a fullback on the Notre Dame 1980, fullback on the Notre Dame team in 1980, excuse me. Frank Ross, who is captain of the 1980 Georgia team, and Vince Dooley, who is coach of the 1980 Georgia team. We're going to talk about the Sugar Bowl in 1980, which took place January 1, 1981 in New Orleans. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
So before we get started on that game, I want to set the picture a little bit and go back some and talk about your motivations going into the 1980 season. So to talk about that, I think we need to look at the 1979 season for both teams for just a little bit. Both programs had kind of an off year. Certainly in regards to what those teams normally do. UGA went 6-5 in 1979. Notre Dame went 7-4 in 1979. Notre Dame was unranked in both major polls for the first time since 1963. So both programs probably had something to prove going into 1980. Could you talk about what your motivations were going into that 1980 season, how you responded to the 1979 season?
Well, for us at Notre Dame, that's the first I had heard we hadn't been ranked since '63. But you had era there for 10 years with just great teams, and then we won the national championship in '77, and then in '78 they also had an outstanding team and played in the Cotton Bowl and had a fantastic comeback win in the Cotton Bowl. So I think there was maybe a bit of fatigue, if you will, with the upperclassmen. But we had a couple tough losses in the course of that year. We had some upset wins, but ending up 7-4 was a bit of a down year for us, bit of a downer. I went there thinking, gosh, I'm gonna come out with at least one ring. Because as a kid growing up in Chicago, they won the national championship in '73. I remember that vividly, and then '77, I was a junior in high school, so I was ready to get mine, if you will, and so we did have that down year, and we worked very hard and focused going forward.
Right, Coach Dooley.
You cover part of it. You cover the.
I'll let you cover the 79. I'll cover the 80.
Yeah. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Give me the tough one. No, it's interesting because our senior class really was a really unique class in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. We were, as a freshman, we gave Coach Dooley his only losing season of his career. And as seniors, we gave him his only undefeated season of his career. In '79, very unique year. We actually lost to all the ACC teams we played that year and won against all the SEC teams except the last game, which was Auburn. And if we beat Auburn, we actually go to the Sugar Bowl as a representative from the Southeastern Conference, which scared the heck out of all the bowl people because it really messed things up. Unfortunately, we lost to Auburn in that game. They had some unbelievable running backs and offensive line coach and linemen. But that year was really unique in a lot of different ways. We ended up finishing 6-5, so we didn't give them another losing season, which is nice. And the next year, we had 22 seniors. 15 of them got degrees. 5 got either MBA, master's, or law degree. So we had a good core of quality leaders. And we were very focused on winning. There was a missing piece to the 1980, and Coach Dooley will cover that. But I will say this, and Herschel will be the first to tell you, we couldn't have won the national championship without Herschel. But as the next 2 years proved, they couldn't have won it either without the senior leadership that we brought to that team. Because the next 2 years, I actually coached with Coach Dooley for 3 years while I was getting my graduate degree. And we had a lot better players than when we were seniors. But still weren't able to win the national championship. So it takes a lot, not just one person.
Well, we did have some struggles in '79, and particularly among other positions at tailback. Even took Steve Kelly, who was a defensive back, and moved him to tailback in that last ball game against Georgia Tech. And Steve was a good running back, and we had a great day that day. So there was a lot of potential in that football team going into 1980. And as Frank said, there was just one missing piece of the puzzle because we had a solid, experienced group throughout the ball club, both offensively and defensively, and the one missing piece of the puzzle, of course, was Herschel Walker. And he finally, on Easter Sunday, he was the last great recruit. He was the number one recruit in the country. He was the last one to actually sign. So we signed him on Easter Sunday, and that got everybody excited, mostly the fans excited for sure. And as it turned out, it was the right thing to get excited about, because he, as Frank pointed out, we could not have won the national championship without Herschel. But on the other hand, Herschel would tell you we could not have won the national championship without the complete football team, which we had. Somebody asked, I think, after the season, what kind of team do you have? We go through a season 12-0, and if you go back to 8 or 9 of those football games, somehow, some way, we won. And it was the same in the Sugar Bowl. When you look back on it, we somehow won. And when the season was over, I couldn't tell you how great we were, but we were the only undefeated team in the country. So you can't argue with success, and as a result of that, undisputed national champions, and they have had a great time since then. And y'all are going to get together, I understand,
Saturday at the indoor facility.
in the indoor facility at the ball game with Notre Dame. Frank is the best captain that in the 25 teams that I had the privilege of coaching at Georgia, and I had some great captains, but Frank is the best, because not only during that season, but he has still kept this team together. And I don't know how many reunions y'all have, but every opportunity you get to have 5. So every opportunity that they get to have one, they have one. And with this ball game coming up, a bunch of them are going to be watching the game, as I understand it, in the indoor facility. So that's leading into the season. I've already got the season over.
Well, there we go. Thanks y'all for coming out.
Can I ask Coach a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So I think, I'm convinced Herschel Walker's the greatest college football player ever. Watching what he did that freshman year, but then the next 2 years for y'all as well. So can you talk a little bit about his recruitment? Who all was after him? How did he
Well,
find?
there's a lot of stories.
Yeah.
As you can imagine. Mike Kevin, who was our backfield coach, took out citizenship in Johnson County, because he was down there every week. You could only have 4 contacts at that time, but he was somewhere in the city, in the county, all week long when he wasn't coaching. But Herschel is such a nice fellow. The biggest problem he had was to tell people no, and of course he was recruited, as you can imagine. Southern Cal was involved in it. And Clemson really recruited him hard, and he was having a hard time saying no, and I thought that was his biggest problem. So he kept putting it off, even to the point where it got me in some kind of domestic problem, because I had promised my wife that I'd take the whole family up to Boston during the Easter holidays to see her brother, who was in medical school up there. And so Wednesday night came, and she said, "What time are we leaving in the morning?" I said, "Barbara, I can't go." And of course, you can imagine the reaction. "What do you mean you can't go?" I said, "Herschel is not signed." And she said, "To heck with Herschel."
That's Barbara.
"Who does he think he is?" I said, "Well, I don't know who he thinks he is, but I know who he is." I'm not going. But he finally, I was in my office that Sunday morning, and Steve Greer, who was one of our coaches, came in, and Steve was the defensive line coach, and he was shaking. He'd just gotten the word that Herschel had made up his mind that he was going sign, and so we went down and signed him. But every day there was something in the paper about him because all the concentration in the country was on Herschel. And the newspapers trying to beat who was going to get the scoop. And even to the effect that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution got a scoop that John Robinson, who was the coach at Southern Cal, had flown in to Macon, Georgia, and had checked into the Hilton Hotel, and he was going to sign Herschel the next day. So they called the Hilton Hotel, said, "Do you have a John Robinson registered there?" And they say, "Yes, we do." So they slammed the phone, said, "Run it, run the story." So there was headlines of the paper, not the sports section, the whole section. Herschel would sign with Southern Cal. Well, there was a John Robinson, but he was a salesman from Valdosta, Georgia. That was there. So there's so many stories about that, and even his sister Veronica, who actually outran Herschel the first couple of years in high school, and we had to start a women's track program, and we had it set for 1 year, but we decided to move it up a year, and Veronica became our first track woman to sign, and she was quite a trackly. She could fly. I mean, just like Herschel. So anyway, there's a lot of stories about it, but and Herschel came, and the rest is history. But he'll be the first to tell you that he had a heck of a supporting cast. The latest evidence is that the Herschel Walker of the defense was Scott Warner, who just now went into the Hall of Fame this past year, and he had such a great game against y'all, as you know, time after time making plays, intercepting balls, and he led the country in punt return. And I think as I think about this team, what we did lead in was punt returns, and we led in turnover margins.
Interceptions.
And interceptions. So we were a solid, good team all the way around, and maybe not really sensational in anything, but good in everything.
You're talking about the recruitment of a superstar player like Herschel Walker. To talk about the balance of this team, you also signed a very unheralded player along with Herschel who ended up having an impact on this game, Terry Hogue. How did you come to find Terry Hogue, and why did you sign him if he was so unheralded?
Well, I'm gonna respond to that, and then I'm gonna quit talking because these guys are the ones that played the game. I stood on the sidelines, but it's an interesting story because that year we signed the most sought-after football player in the country, at Herschel, and then we signed the least sought-after football player in the country, and Terry Hogue. Terry had no scholarship offers to any Division I-A school at the time, except Georgia. He was from Huntsville, Texas. We had 1 or 2 scholarships left over, and so I said, well, let's go out and find a real top student, and the one that maybe if he hangs around 2 or 3 years, maybe by his senior year, he'll help us. And so we had 2 or 3 names, and one of them was this fellow from Huntsville, Texas, who had been a quarterback that tore his knee up halfway through the season. A superb student. He was a straight-A student in genetics, as a matter of fact. His daddy was a doctor, and he could have certainly been a doctor. But he came, and he played a significant role in the game because we were going to redshirt him. I was not going to take him to New Orleans, but he was a reckless guy that got your attention. And so in the practices before we were going on the trip, he kept blocking extra points and field goals. And then finally he blocked one, and then I got emotionally jacked up, and I told him to go inside and get your gear. You're going to New Orleans with us. And he ends up blocking a kick. After you went ahead 3-0, we were able to block a kick and tied the ball game up 3-3. But it's extremely unusual that in that one recruiting class that you would have the most sought after, the least sought after, both of them became consensus All-Americans. Herschel for 3 years, and then Terry Hogue for 2, and he was an academic All-American. Yeah. Okay, that's the last question you asked me. Talk to these guys.
Well, we're going to get to these guys now. We need to build the team first. Now we get to
Okay.
play the season. So talking a little bit about the 79 season, coming into 80, you both had different motivations, maybe redemption for your programs, but also for Notre Dame, your coach was retiring. Dan Devine, your coach for several years, announced for the season that he was going to retire. How did that impact you and your team coming into the season?
Well, it was, I can remember some of it vividly. You know, he announced at a team meeting, it was right, it was before we had come back to school, but we were in South Bend for fall camp, quote unquote. He announced at a team meeting, and then we broke up to go to into Hager Hall, which is just at the end of the North Quad, and we were going to break up to go into our position group meetings. And I remember everyone walking into the building, very somber tone. You know, we were a bit shocked, I think, is the way to put it. I'm in a somber tone to things. I don't know that the season we set out on the season necessarily to win one for Devine. It was we really wanted, I think, to improve upon what we had had as a year the year before. But I remember it vividly the night and people walking into the hall, going to meetings, very somber, quiet.
And for the Georgia team going into the season, there was another incident, I think, end of spring camp that maybe had an impact on your gentlemen. Tell us a little bit about the pig incident.
I mean, that obviously it's become pretty well known. All the details the details aren't out yet, so we can't let him know all the details. But no, there was an incident where basically back in the old days, you didn't become part of the varsity until after your spring or your freshman year, because freshmen could only play freshman ball. And so tradition was after your spring practice of your freshman year, you become part of the varsity. And so there was a ritual. We'd have an initiation for the freshmen, and that year we decided we were going to have the best one ever. And so we decided to procure a pig. Unfortunately, we didn't have any money, and so we decided to go to the swine center, and we had a very good archer in our center who could shoot a bow and arrow real well. And 5 of us decided we're going to pull this off, and we did pull it off until the freshmen messed it all up. But we had an interesting time, but it brought the team really close together. Coach obviously got very upset with us and put down some serious punishment for the 5 seniors that were involved in this thing. But what you saw is a bunch of guys coming together to support us, because we had to pay for the pig through working, and so everybody'd give a buck or two. We didn't have any money back then. And so that really was I think what brought a cohesiveness to our team, besides the maturity of our seniors. But something very interesting, you might remember this, Coach. In the spring, you had a speaker come speak to us. I don't even remember this. I think he was a psychologist or a motivational speaker. I can't remember the details, but in the spring practice, before one of the practices, he had a gentleman come speak to us, and I don't remember his name. And in my 4 years at Georgia, we never talked about national championship. It was always SEC championship. And for some reason, that spring, when that gentleman was speaking, he was giving a motivational speech, and he goes, "What's y'all's goal?" And a couple of seniors blurted out, "national championship." This is interesting, because never in all my years there, that never had happened. And he goes, "When's it played?" And we said, "January 1st, 1981. Where? In New Orleans." So he hands out 5x8 cards in pencils to everybody. He said, I want you to write down national champions, January 1st, 1981. And I want you to tape it to the mirror, so the first thing you see in the morning when you brush your hair is that, and the last thing you see when you're brushing your teeth at night is that. And I still have the card. And so we did that. And ironically, during the initiation, we never told you this, a lot of the seniors had gotten magic markers and written all over our backs, national champions. So when the freshmen, all the underclassmen came out there, that's what they saw. And that's the kind of stuff that happened that year. And that summer we had to stay, because he punished us pretty heavily with a lot of different things. And it was just a very supportive group. And our defensive coordinator, I'll never forget, he put us on restrictions till the thing kind of figured itself out. Because if he said if he got in the media, I got a good mind to kick you off the team. Remember that? You didn't say you would, you said you got a good mind to. I do remember that part.
I'm listening.
Oh, I remember, because you were furious at us. But that year, one of the things we had to do was paint the wall that surrounds the whole 2 football fields. It's 120, so you total 240 yards. And to this day, it's still one of the hottest recorded summers in the history of Athens, Georgia. It happened to be that year. So he made us paint that wall, and it's cinder blocks. If you ever paint a cinder block, you put paint on it just like a sponge, it just absorbs. You got to do 5-6 coats. So we finally, every day from 1 to 4, we had to do the wall, and that was the money that we made from that. We had to pay for the pig, the restitution, and so we got about 5 yards from the end. Now this is a huge wall, and here comes that Lincoln Town car. Remember that Lincoln Continental you had?
Yeah.
Comes running down the road, stops, looks at us. We're just sweating. We're just covered in paint. Rolls down the window to the passenger side, looks at us. It's not good enough. Do it again. Rolls up the window and takes off. Oh, Lord.
Well, it needed another coat.
No.
A better way.
No. You will make sure we never made that mistake again. But that's those kind of things can either break a team apart or bring a team together. And I think because of the maturity of the team, especially the seniors, I think brought us together. At least this is what the freshmen tell me. When Herschel and I are like brothers, and he said it 100 times, and even Freddie Gilbert said, I used to watch how y'all behaved on the field, and that I didn't know that, but that's what happens. So anyway, that was something that happened I thought was very interesting with that speaker, because it never happened before my 4 years there.
We've heard a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses of the Georgia team, the great senior leadership. Tell us about the Notre Dame team that year. What were your strengths? What were your weaknesses? How did you look at yourselves going into that season?
That's really interesting. We had, from the year before, we had essentially graduated the year before all the remaining guys that were part of the 77 national championship team. Most of those guys had graduated, except for Scott Zedek, who had redshirted that year, had a knee issue, and he came back. And otherwise, it was really a lot of seniors who were sophomores on that team and hadn't really played a lot. And then our underclass, freshman and sophomore classes were, the class that I was in, which was at that time was the sophomore class, and then the junior class, they were really talented. So we were chomping at the bit to play. And we had this guy Scott Zedek, who was part of this old school, and he kind of was the catalyst that pulled us together. And then we had one linebacker named Bob Kraebel, who was a phenomenal linebacker. Yeah. Again, one of the great linebackers. He has the career tackles record at Notre Dame. He only played 3 years, started 3 years, 300 and something tackles. Manti Te'o started 4 years and still was 100 tackles behind him or something like that. He's just a phenomenal player, and that our defense catalyzed around those guys, and then our offense was really these underclassmen that hadn't had a chance to play, that were chomping at the bit to play, and we're excited. And so it was an exciting year. Started really strong in the fall, and the first few games really were exciting games for us, with these younger players making major contributions. So that's kind of how the year shook out. Our defense was phenomenal that year, and really relied on them for most of our victories, and our offense was just good enough.
Yeah, I think as I look back on it now, in the 25 years that I coached, that the Notre Dame defense was among the top 2 or 3 defenses of all the teams we had played. Y'all were really, really good on defense. I mean, really good. And I remember that. And I think one of the best testimonies to Herschel is the fact that I don't think there was a back that went over 100 yards against that Notre Dame defense the whole season. And Herschel, with that dislocated shoulder, had 150 yards in the ball game against that defense, which is the best testimony to Herschel that I know of.
Yeah, actually, the split was 42-58 in time of possession. So that's how strong the defense was at Notre Dame. You were holding. I mean, there's a lot of 3 and outs. It's driving us crazy on defense.
Yeah.
But I went back and looked, and that's the breakdown was 42 minutes that we had offense, and in 58 minutes. It was just that's the way the game went.
Yeah. Had it not been for the bounce of the ball, which was the case the whole season.
Talking about that season, how aware were you of the Georgia team and what they were doing, and vice versa? Were y'all aware of the Notre Dame team and what they were doing through that season?
You know, it's interesting because back then it's not like it is today. I think you could maybe play 2 or 3 nationally televised games, and so quite honestly, we were much more of a we would play the USCs, obviously. We play Army and Navy every year, but we were much more of a Midwest-based team. We played Michigan State, Purdue every year, and so we didn't really see a lot of what was going down in the SEC. Now, when we played Alabama, I'm not sure we got to see any film. I don't know if you guys played Alabama in '80. So we played Alabama late in the year, but we really didn't become aware of Georgia really until I would say that, it started looking. We had accepted to the Sugar Bowl after we beat Alabama, and then I think the Florida one is when all of a sudden we said, wait a minute, we're going to play these guys, and that was really the first time that we had. They were on our radar screen. Not to say that they weren't a great team or something like that, but we were much more focused, in the Midwest, and then USC was was the big, the big challenge for us every year, and so that's where our focus was, and not like it is today, where first of all, you turn on the TV, you're watching 3 or 4 games at a time, and then the SEC is so dominant, across the country. People really focus on the SEC, so it was a different time then. But we weren't aware, and I think I have to say to a degree that played into a bit of our complacency, maybe, or I don't want to say complacency, or maybe a little bit of might have watched a little bit of the film when we started, thinking things, boy, they had some close squeakers, and weren't paying attention to their ability to win games in any different way that they could, and we became a little complacent, and I think that's evident by the way that we played in the game with 5 turnovers and squandered a real opportunity.
Well, I was aware of Notre Dame from shortly after I was born. Being a Catholic boy growing up in a town in the South and being taught by nuns and brothers, and back then Notre Dame was the only game on the radio. They didn't have television, of course, but on the radio, and so we had listening parties, and that was always what I wanted to do, was to go to Notre Dame. Really, growing up, that was my life ambition. So I told the story, and it really happened that once it was announced that we were going to play Notre Dame, I got a call from the nuns who taught me in grammar school, and one of them in particular called, and she said, "Oh, we're so proud of you, Vincent. Oh, we're so happy for you. Could you get us 4 tickets to the game?" Of course, you wasn't going to turn the nuns down, And I do remember they came by the hotel. We had an afternoon game. They came by that morning, and they ran up. They were in their habits, so they ran up. They hugged me and said, "Oh, we're so proud of you." And so I gave them the tickets. When they were going out, I said, "Don't forget, say a little prayer for the Bulldogs." So, "Oh, no, Vincent, we're playing for Notre Dame." They actually took my tickets and went out and cheered and prayed for Notre Dame. So I've been aware of Notre Dame for a long time.
Yeah. Ironically, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I immigrated from Spain when I was 6 years old, and of course, everybody in Spain, 99% of the population is Catholic. So when I was growing up, I obviously never played sports and when I was in Spain, but I always wanted to play for Notre Dame. Now, of course, they didn't recruit me. Nobody recruited me, really. I was a Terry Hogue of our class, but I always wanted to play at Notre Dame. It's kind of funny that the last game I played in was against Notre Dame for the national championship game, but I never did get even a letter saying, "Hey, how are you?"
Me either.
But it was always one of those things. I always wondered what you because I can see how y'all wouldn't recognize us, because we moved up very slowly that year. I mean, it was very methodical. I mean, it was like boom. And it wasn't until, and I'm trying to remember, When y'all lost to Tech, when y'all tied Tech, y'all number 1, weren't you?
We were number 1. Alabama had lost to Mississippi State the week before. We had a big win over somebody, a huge win, and they had lost to Mississippi State the week before, and we were number 1. And we went on to Tech in 3-3.
Yeah, we were very aware of Notre Dame through the season. Obviously, you're actually number 1 for a couple of weeks, if not longer.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, what did y'all think of these old country bumpkins from Georgia coming up there to play?
Yeah, we really, I really think that if I have few regrets in life. When one is I think we squandered a real opportunity, and in terms of how we prepared. We maybe were a little, I don't want to say complacent, big-headed, because I agree. Watching how Georgia moved up, moved up the ranks, we just steadily started jumping up.
Yeah, we became number 1 after Tech tied you.
In the Florida game.
Yeah.
And so we somehow won the Florida game right at the end, and that shot us up there. But I can see how that would, somebody look at it, they were still shaking their head after the Notre Dame game, wondering.
Yeah.
Well,
How could this team be number 1?
12-0, No
we went to the
beat.
locker room after the Florida, which is a miracle win. We never should have been that. We should have won that game outright we just made some dumb mistakes. But we literally go in the locker room after the Florida game, after that big play, and somebody announces that Notre Dame and Tech had tied. We thought they were kidding, because we knew that would probably put us at number 1. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we just we squandered that opportunity, I think, by not being just really vigilant. The attention to detail necessary those 2 weeks before. We just thought we were. Hey, we beat Michigan, we beat Alabama. These are the great teams. And,
We unintentionally lulled you to sleep.
Yeah.
With our team.
And we didn't pay attention to the way that we needed to prepare. I think I really do.
I've always wanted to go to Notre Dame. In fact, I came up, you sure would remember this, but when they had the Dan Devine retirement party, Father Joyce invited me to come up and speak on behalf of all the coaches in the country at that banquet. And I really always had great respect for Dan Devine. Watched him at Missouri when he really had some great teams. And he had a top assistant named Al Onofrio that was a line coach. And we went out and visited when I was a young coach and followed that team. Even though another ironic part of it is that Georgia played Missouri when Fran Tarkenton was a quarterback in the Orange Bowl and against Missouri. So anyway, going up to Notre Dame was quite a thrill for me to finally get there, and I was a spokesperson. Got a nice little beautiful plaque from Father Joyce, who I was always thought was a great person. I'm sure you knew Father Joyce.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I finally got a chance to go see Notre Dame. My son got recruited there, and so I went to pick him up. I was working in New York, and I flew back. I was going to pick him up and bring him back home from the camp. They had him at camp and got to see touchdown Jesus. They took us in the stadium. Nobody was in there. They just took us in there. And Bill Lewis was coaching there. Coach Lewis, our defensive coordinator, actually. Defensive back in 1980, but the coordinator 81, 82, 83, and on. And we went in there. It's pretty cool.
It's a great place.
Yeah, it is.
Are you going up to the game?
Yep, I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to be there.
Oh, good.
And he has a son who plays at Auburn.
Now?
Yeah, now. So it was a tough call whether Clemson, Auburn, or but my lovely bride's going to go up to the Auburn game, and we have a daughter who's a senior in high school, really wants to go to school at Notre Dame, so we're going to take her up. And,
what position does he play?
fullback, chip off the old block like that.
And what year is he?
He's a junior.
Yeah,
he's a
oh,
junior.
Good. Well,
We're really proud of him.
I have a little connection with him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's good.
We're really proud of him. He's pre-med and doing a lot better than Dad did when he was pre-med. So
I think he did pretty well.
Yeah,
well,
he's doing
pretty well. Listen to him. He's doing chief of surgery. Bad.
I'm really proud of him. He's really
good.
doing great stuff.
Right.
So it's really good stuff. But we'll be up there.
Good.
Blue and gold too. I won't be wearing no red and black. Unfortunately. even though we have ties, we won't.
We're going to have a lot of red and black up there.
I think
they
you're
might
right.
not get in the game.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Well, you know, look, we've gone through kind of the season, and now we're up at the Sugar Bowl. You're going up against each other. What are the game plans for the teams going into that game? From the Notre Dame perspective, how did y'all plan against Georgia? And how did we plan against Notre Dame? What were the plans going in for each team? How to attack the other team, how to stop the other team?
You know, we had been very much a power running team, and so our plan was just to line up and smack them in the mouth, and that's what we had done most of the year. Actually, we weren't very creative. We didn't throw the ball a lot. We had an outstanding offensive line coach, and it's interesting, at the time we had probably the biggest line in college football, but they averaged about 265, which today would be they'd be redshirted in the weight room, but 265, 270 was our size, and so we were planning just power football, and that had been our that had been our yardstick the entire year, and that's what we were going to stick with.
What were your coaches telling you about the Georgia team?
Well, that's a good question. I think they were trying to help us avoid from being complacent. I think they could sense that we weren't as focused as we needed to be potentially going into it, and so I think that was the big thing. But the thing that we needed to do was just focus on ourselves and doing our jobs correctly, and that's really what they kind of harped on us about.
And your quarterback was a freshman.
A kid named Blair Keel from Columbus, Indiana, who had a rocket for an arm and actually played for the Green Bay Packers for several years. Was also a great punter, and punted that year, was our starting punter. And was a very good athlete, and he could throw the ball a mile, but he had one touch, and that was full speed. And it was it turned out to be a really great quarterback, but I think in that game, just a bit over his head in terms of if you will, the time, the place. It was just a bit much for him.
Coach Dooley, Strauss.
Yeah, I was just thinking about him. I think on the first play, he threw the ball a mile down the field and
almost caught it. I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
it.
could have been
Almost caught it.
could have been a big play. And then he was could scramble real good. He was hard to
could.
him up. He's great athlete, but it's a freshman in that kind of a situation. I think about our situation going up to South Bend with our young freshman quarterback, Jake Fromm. That's I think it's balanced that game up considerably with the loss of our quarterback. But I can't think of anybody that I'd rather have going up there than Jake Fromm, because I've never seen a freshman quarterback that had more confidence in himself than this guy does. I mean, he really,
He's poised.
yeah, he thinks he's good, or I don't know how good he is, but he sure
Don't tell him he's not.
I'm not. But yeah, their offensive line was huge back in those days. Yeah, it was huge, and it was power football. So from the defensive standpoint, I know we had a real challenge, and of course we were going to run Herschel, and that almost blew up in our face on the second play when he dislocates his shoulder. But obviously, a good testimony of their defense is that I think Buck, our quarterback, was a good quarterback, was sacked 4 times in a ball game. Only completed 1 pass, but it was the most important pass to finally keep the ball at the end when we were just hanging on. So that was it. It was Herschel, run Herschel, and which is what we've been doing, and hope for the best all year.
Yeah, I think for us, as opposed to the offense, and I was with the offense the whole time, but as a team, we were going to stop Herschel. That was it. That was the goal. We wanted to stop Herschel, and and we tried our best, and we couldn't. I would say that was the goal, was stopping Herschel.
And that shows you how dominant he was. I mean, and Coach Dooley ain't gonna like me saying this, but we're gonna run the ball with Herschel because I coached with him for 3 years. I'd be in the press box, run him right, run him left, and
run him up the middle.
But you like the outside one because you wanted to see his speed take off. But to be able to do that against the Notre Dame team, y'all knew he was gonna get the ball. You knew where he was gonna be. You knew the plays. I mean, pretty much set plays. We hadn't thrown a lot that year, and for him to gain 150 yards against y'all had unbelievable defense that year. It shows you I still think he's the greatest player ever to play college football. I mean, he was that dominant. I do remember the offensive line. I can still remember. I can't remember the two guys that tackled in the guard, but I remember Posderac was 6'9".
Yeah.
He weighed about 270. Thayer, who played for the Bears for years, he was about 6'5" or 6'4". You had Scully, starting center at 6'5", about 250. You had the other guard was around 6'4", 6'5", and you had the other tackle was 6'7" or 6'8". I can't remember his name.
6'7", Mike Shiner.
Shiner, yeah.
Shiner.
And I remember just
Which today, those guys would have been 320 pounds. It would have
yeah.
been a gigantic line. And Phil Posderac was a great basketball player at 6'9", could really run. Tom and I have the same birthday, and when our freshman year we were roommates for fall camp. He's from Joliet, I'm from Deerfield, which is about 40 miles away. And I remember when I knew that this was not high school football anymore, is when we were running 40s, and Tom Thayer ran a 4.8 at about 245 as a freshman. And he was amazing. Yeah. And even back then, I think he was an amazing athlete that even would translate today.
You line up and you see these guys, and you're like,
he was something.
I remember lining up against a 6'8" guy, and then we flip-flopped, as you know, flipped our defense. And the next guy thought, okay, I've seen the biggest I'm going to see. I get over this Posderac, 6'9". That thing's huge.
Yeah, he was a great player, great athlete.
Yeah.
He played with the Cowboys for several years, and just a great player. And they put weight on him, got him up to about 300 pounds, and he was a great left tackle.
Where you would see that in Navy?
He was a junior. He was a junior that year.
Yeah, I just remember all the guys we discussed. I became friends with him when he went to the Falcons because Scott and him played together, Warner. And he's a great guy. But I didn't realize he's a real accomplished pianist.
Yeah, pianist, yeah. Very good.
So you mentioned, from the defense perspective, did you have a special plan going in, or was it just kind of what you've been doing the whole time?
We were a team that we didn't break. Mm-hmm. And that was our philosophy. We knew that the defense we played would allow for some, if you pounded, you get some yardage, but as the field shrunk, then we shrunk with you. And you saw that happen a lot during the game. You would get some yards here and you'd drive the ball down the field. But more importantly, opportunistic. That's what that team that year represented, create turnovers. And as you saw in that game, we created, actually the points we scored were all off turnovers, if I remember correctly. And so,
yes.
And that's what we hung our hat on. Tough defense, gang tackling, very disciplined. Everybody do their responsibilities and run to the ball and create turnovers by doing that. If you run the ball, when the running back spins and somebody's coming, liable to hit the ball and it'll pop out, and generally that's what happens. So is that kind of mentality. Do the same thing what brought us to the dance, But we did line up in we had to split 60. The only wrinkle we put in there, Coach Russell, to kind of try to confuse the offensive line, is we'd switch the strong side and the weak side before the snap. We wouldn't move sides. We would just shift from our positions. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So I would start off at Will, and right before the ball snapped, I'd shift to Mike, but they'd be on the same side. That's about the only wrinkle we really put in the game, if I remember correctly.
Coach Dooley, you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the game, Herschel dislocated his shoulder. How did you feel about that? Obviously, this was
I felt terrible.
this was a bad thing to happen.
Not as bad as him, though, right, Coach?
So what happened? How did he go about dislocating his shoulder?
Well, I think it was the second play that was a sweep out on the far side from where we were, and he comes out and his elbow was up in the air, and we put Carney Norris in. And then Dr. Death.
Dr. Death.
This is the name that the team gave the trainer.
Everything
was a disaster, So he comes up to me, and we're on defense, so I'm in the game, and I could sense that he was standing right next to me, the trainer, with this kind of smirk. He had a smirk about him, you know. So he said, I could hear him, Herschel's finish. Well, that was Dr. Death saying that. And I thought to myself at the time, Dr. Death, you'll finish. I really almost turned and choked it. But I thought, national television, nobody would take the occasion to defend me. And about that time, we go on offense, and Herschel goes back in. They put the shoulder back in, and he goes in. I didn't know until several years later that how he protected that. I wrote this book on 34 of Georgia's most memorable plays, and he had 4 of them. Could have had more, but one of them was going over the top against y'all. And he said that because of his shoulder, that he normally would go and roll this way, but in that ball game he had to roll the opposite way, and that he was constantly protecting his shoulder all during the ball game, which I never knew. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, you couldn't tell. From our end, you couldn't.
But you watch him run, and he always protected the other shoulder. It's really, you have to watch it, but you could see he was protecting. Like if he was running to the left, because I think it was the right shoulder that went out. And if he's running to the left, and he's getting ready to get he dipped
turning left, which he normally would turn the other way.
But you have to watch the game because he didn't never show it. Even coming off the game, the only reason you could tell he was coming off the game, he always ran like this. And he ran off that field with one arm going, it was kind of dangling, going like that. Remember that?
Yeah,
and I thought.
Yeah. And then when I went back and saw him going over the top, he rolled this way, which he said I always rolled to the right, but I had to roll to the left. But I never knew that till 10, 15 years later.
So y'all weren't aware that he had hurt his shoulder?
No.
Or didn't register?
No, not at all. Not until after the game.
And we didn't either. None of the players knew about it until after the game.
And he kind of stepped up a notch after 150, and then separated shoulder. We were like, okay, okay, he was okay in our eyes after that.
That was a cool story about you running into him 5 years ago downtown.
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
It was, and actually, it was when the restaurant opened in downtown Athens, and we drove over to visit, take out one of our sons for pizza, and we pulled up and parked, and he walked right in front of our car, and I said, "Hey, there's Herschel." It was like 1980 had just occurred. And I said, "Hey, there's Herschel," and my wife and kids talked me into walking up to him and saying hello. I didn't want to bother him, but we talked for a little bit, and the way I started the conversation was, "Hi, Herschel. I'm John Sweeney. You scored your second touchdown in the Sugar Bowl after my fumble." And he was, very polite. "Oh, well, thank you very much." How he was just so polite, and we talked, and my wife took a picture of us together. That was
he called me after that.
Did he? Did he really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's neat, because it was really special for me to meet him.
Yeah.
And I have the picture with me today. Well, it's on my phone. And the one thing I like to point out to people is, I look like I could still play, but Herschel looks like he could play a lot more.
No, he's freaky.
He's fit and ready to go. That was.
Well, speaking of meetings and fumbling, you two met during the game, and there was a fumble involved. Walk us through that. Tell us the story.
We met several times because I remember the linebacker always had to take on the fullback to turn the play in, and your job was to knock the fullback out. So we did, and y'all ran the eye, which
we our signature play that year was a play. I don't know. My number was 33, but we didn't. It wasn't. It was 33 seal, which was just the series, and it was essentially a dive, and my job was to block him. So we knocked into each other a bunch. The play that I fumbled on was, I think it was the beginning of the second quarter, and the way the sequence had gone is we received the kickoff, drove down, scored a field goal, and then held you on the first series and got the ball back and drove down, and I think it was a penalty that stopped the drive. We kicked the field goal, and Terry Hogue blocked the field goal. You guys scored, then kicked off.
And the long one, right?
Yeah, and our deep backs couldn't hear each other. The ball fell right in between them. And then the second quarter started, and the first play of the second quarter, they gave me my token carry of the game. And I'll never forget, I ran into something really hard, and I remember right away, I was like, oh my goodness, where is the football? Oh, I don't,
And actually smart, because when I heard him say something, I knew something had happened. And obviously from that point of view, you think, okay, the ball's down. And I quit driving my feet and tried to get away, and he grabbed me, which is what you want to do to keep me from getting the ball. But yeah, it was interesting.
It was so loud. It was so loud that's one thing I take away from the game. The things that really stick out is how loud it was, and even though how big of a stadium, it seemed you could look up and see in the upper deck and could see the people that were like right on top of you. But when I fumbled, I tried to, I was trying to let everyone scream, ball, I fumbled, and it was so loud, I just knew no one was going to hear. And you wouldn't let go of me. I was trying to get away to get the ball.
I was trying to get away to get the ball, and you grabbed me. Because you see the picture, I'm trying to roll off, and you grabbed me, which is what you're supposed to do.
Y'all both were embracing each other.
Yeah, we were in love. No,
well, the game, for people ask me about that game, and I think it's funny. Sunday morning we got back we went to the Auburn game late, and we got back Sunday morning. And my youngest daughter's 14, came in, and she had her Apple laptop with YouTube opened up and had the game. And she said, "Dad, here's your play where you fumbled." She's running it back and forth. "Here's your play where you fumbled." And I thought, that's just rotten of you. But I would have to say that's the game, probably the worst I played in my career. In that it just never settled in. I was so excited. That usually I say that first hit and you settle in. It took me the whole first half to settle in. I was just so excited. I was just missing. And when that play happened, I remember running off the sideline, and I said, I think I went to Coach Devine and said, "Look, I'm just not all there. Take me on. I'm sorry I fumbled." And I remember John Scully came up to me on the sideline and said, "Get your head out of your, we need you. Forget about it and come back and play hard." But it was just, that was the kind of the pinnacle at that that first half of I just felt like I was just missing. And then that play, and when you look back through that YouTube video, we had 3 guys, you guys had 4. We shouldn't have run the play. It was a bad play.
I thought y'all were trying to run an isolation where I would step to the right, and that way the quick dive to you, you 2 guys kick out. I would take the wrong step, because I think if I remember the quarterback, didn't he rotate around?
Yeah, he did.
So I was supposed to take a step to the right, and I think that would give the quick bump to you. In other words, you hit the line so quick. For some reason, Coach Russell always said the fullback steps towards you, you meet him in the backfield. And for some reason, I did not take the quarterback's bite on that one. That's just one of those things, just they beat in their head so much.
If you look at the play, because you can, it's interesting, they run it back, and my daughter's running it back and forth, and they're saying things like, "Sweeney, who doesn't carry the ball very much." I mean, she's like playing this back and forth for me. Frank Broyles was doing the
Keith
color.
Jackson.
Yeah, right. Frank Broyles, "Sweeney, who doesn't carry the ball very much." But you can see that the left guard and the center had a game on and a twist, and they had that side sealed, and you came free. And if he hadn't come free, it would have been a good play.
Well, yeah, I think nobody's supposed to block me. I think I was supposed to bite on the quarterback spinning. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously he's going that way, and that gives you the quick jump on the ball right there. But like I said, Coach Russell beat it in our heads. I formation, the fullback takes a step towards you. If you took a step towards defensive end, then I realized it's not a lead play. And he just beat it into us. I mean, and so as soon as you stepped towards me, I just went straight ahead, and I was surprised as hell that you had the ball.
Yeah, well, not for very long, actually. But if you so I have my Sports Illustrated with me that I showed you guys, and I'm going to get you both to sign it for me. But they say in Sports Illustrated, they say usually, I have this is etched in the memory. Usually sure-handed fullback John Sweeney dropped the ball without any apparent contact. Yeah, so
still not giving respect.
Yeah, that's right.
Still don't respect.
Right? I'm not, So I like to run that play back and forth to show people that it wasn't
You
just
wasn't
dropping
into
the
it.
ball.
No,
I
I mean,
actually
it
got
him
hit.
actually went on the ball. So,
But
Who
that,
was it? Tim Crow had a big hit in
against
that
Carter.
Was that,
Yeah.
God,
What was his first name?
Phil Carter.
Phil Carter, yeah.
Carter,
Remember
yeah.
that play?
But
No.
that place was loud. I mean, it is a
It was so loud.
place. Yeah.
And after that fumble, I knew that no one could hear me yelling, I fumble, ball,
Yeah,
or
you
screaming
can't,
ball
yeah.
at the top of my lungs.
Gentlemen, I hate to interrupt. We've got to take about a 10-second break. We were talking about Tim Crow's big hit. So we could kind of pick up the conversation there. Who did he hit, and why was it such a big hit?
Well, I don't know who he hit or why it was such a big hit, but it was a big hit. You could hear it. And I think Tim still walks today. He lives in Athens. He's very proud of that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I think I told him of all the hits that never heard one quite so loud. And I think the commentators commented on it as well. Yeah. And Tim Crow.
Yeah, basically ran an inside stunt, and the guard didn't catch him, and he was slant. And Carter was actually just running that way, and he caught him almost sideways, but you could hear the stadium. It was loud.
We talked a second ago. Or you mentioned a minute ago that we had a kickoff that Notre Dame. We had a kickoff that Notre Dame was not able to pick up. What happened with that play?
I don't know. I still, we had. This is really interesting. I'm a surgeon now. One of the things that I really value and hold very dearly is safety, surgical safety, and safety around what we do, and when I look back on that, it's a great example of the wrong engineering for a situation. We had Jim Stone and Ty Barber, who weren't really loud guys to start with, were their two deep backs, and the way that we would decide who was going to take the ball, Jim would say you, or me, and so we hadn't played a game all year long in a dome stadium, and when we played against Alabama, that was in Birmingham, that was probably the loudest place that we played that year, and they didn't kick off to us because they didn't score a touchdown, and so there's just no way, as loud as it was in that stadium, that you were going to hear Jim Stone yelling you, or you, me. He's just not a loud guy, and that was again just one of the things that we missed. So Jim was yelling you. Ty thought he was saying me, and they both ran away, and the ball just dropped, and it was slow motion. It's interesting when I watched the game. It was like I was frozen. My goodness, what? How did this happen? I didn't, and the other deep back, a guy named Pete Buchanan, we split time at fullback. You can see Pete rushing in and trying to recover the ball. But we were just shocked that, how did this happen? And again, we engineered a system that was doomed to fail in that environment, and weren't ready for it. And so and that, I think that the wheels started honestly started to fall off probably when you blocked the field goal, and then you scored, and then it was just a sequence of mistakes after that really led to 17 points before you know it, 17-3 before you know it.
It's ironical that the two brothers that were involved in it were the Kelly brothers. They played in the secondary force, and Steve Kelly, whoever the Notre Dame player was that was trying to get the ball, he knocked the ball away from him, and his brother, Bob Kelly, recovered the ball on the 2-yard line. And Kelly's a good Irish name.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
And who was it that? And I've got a good Irish name too. But the Kelly brothers, Steve and Bob, that combined on that. We, of course, you can laugh if things go right, but we often said that I don't know why anybody would call us lucky just because we had the longest onside kick
In the history of the game.
in college football.
At the right time.
It was just a good kick.
I've always said, though, and I don't know if you agree with this, that one play epitomized that team
Yes.
in all respects. And what I mean by that is Steve had started tailback against Georgia Tech his freshman year. Remember that? When you moved him from defensive back to tailback?
Yeah.
Bob had started at cornerback his sophomore year, and we moved him to rover. He became a second teamer. So part of that nucleus of that team was people had started, for some reason that year, did what's very hard to do and accepted their roles. And they accepted their roles to the point of they're going to be the best at whatever role they play in the team. And that's an example where if Bob and Steve let up for just a tenth of a second,
Yeah.
it was that close because you remember the guy was getting to grab the ball. Steve's head gets between the ball and the guy. Bob hasn't slowed down. He could have slowed down for a tenth of a second. He didn't slow down. The ball rolls. He jumps on it. And that really was, is that luck or is that just when preparation meets opportunity? If they would have been hustling, now obviously it's luck the guys didn't call the play, but if those two guys don't take their roles 100% serious, that play doesn't happen and the game could be a totally different game. But I always felt that play really epitomized the personality, I guess for lack of a better word, of that team. Everybody accepted their role, whatever it was. I don't know how you feel about it, but I've always felt that way in looking back at that season.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that, and I guess it was just a destiny. I don't know, because time after time throughout that whole season, we had things happen like that.
And I'd say that's the one thing that was transparent to us. We didn't realize. I think, did we take the game lightly? No, I don't think so. But we didn't realize that
Intangibles.
Yes, and by not taking that as seriously as we should have, that's why we had 5 turnovers, and I think that's important. That's an important point. And how would you know it unless you're really attuned, as a connoisseur of the sport, to paying attention to those kinds of things. But that clearly was the difference.
You look back to, in all fairness, Notre Dame, 5 turnovers, you don't lose by a touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean,
we were kicking ourselves, I tell you, and we squandered. We went back, and especially as you move. We graduated 5 kids off of that team, and I thought, well, we're going to be back next year or the year after. No worries, but you squander an opportunity like that, you really kick yourself out. That's what I tell my children now. This is a once in a lifetime shot. Don't mess it up. You're not going to get it again. You got to go in with that mindset. You'll be lucky if you get it again.
One thing that's evident looking back at the film of this game is that it was a tough physical game. What was going through y'all's mind during that game as it was going on? Were you wearing down mentally or physically, or was it just tough it out and let's get through this?
No, I remember. Well, so I remember the first half clearly, and I don't remember the second half much because it was. When I say I don't remember it at all, what I remember in the second half is again some squandered opportunities. I think Scott Warner had an interception in the end zone, and. But what I really remember about the second half was it was rock'em sock'em. It was so physical. At least for me, it was. It was just such a physical second half of football, and I don't remember any discrete plays like I did in the first half. It was just I just remember how physical it was, and I think by the how fatigued. I don't know how you all were feeling, but I was getting tired, and it was so physical.
Yeah. I lost 17 pounds from when we started the game because they weighed us, they made us weigh in and weigh out. Mm-hmm. And when we came off that field, and later on that night, it really got me back because we didn't know I was dehydrated. Back then, you don't have any clue. But that's what I remember. I mean, it was hot, it was loud, it was like rock'em sock'em. And just, there's times I remember getting up from a tackle and just, energy to get up. And I ended up finally the last 2 series of the game, I played with my shoulder straps undone. Because back then I don't know if y'all wore them, where you put them real tight so your ribs take on the pressure, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And like now they wear it protected more in the shoulder, and so I just undid those the last 2 series. I literally you just want to get any bit of oxygen you could get. But I was exhausted. And actually, that night went out with my parents came to the game, and Dad had gotten a reservation at a German restaurant. And my parents been from Spain, didn't really understand football that much, so that's probably 1 or 2 games that came and watched me my whole career. But he knew this was big, obviously, and so my girlfriend and her family with it. So we had everybody. My brother, I got 5 brothers and sisters, and so I finally get there, and then we got the table, and we start to order stuff, and I'm still sweating. This is hours after the game. I'm still just sweating, and finally they bring our food, and I started eating. I looked at my dad. I said, "Dad, I'm getting ready to get sick." And he said, "Go back to your room." So I went back to the room. And lay down. I didn't know, I probably should be drinking water, like crazy. And so finally, I'm sitting there. I'm thinking like, okay, we just won the national championship. I'm in my room. So I took a shower, walked down to Bourbon Street. I got one of those hot dogs from one of those carts, and I felt like I was gonna get sick again. I went back to the room. That was my celebration.
Really?
That's it. The next day we had to fly back because we had to go with the team.
Yeah.
And that was my celebration. That's my biggest regret.
One of the things I used to pride myself on when I was playing is that I was going to get up no matter how bad I felt, how hard I hit the guy, and it was really hard in that second half of that game. It was so physical. That's what I really remember. I remember we went into the locker room, and this is the one time a coach, when Coach Devine this is the last time we're going to be with him, and we said this is our last time together with Coach Devine, with these coaches, and so we really resolved to come out and play as physical as we had played all year, and so that's really what I remember. And so, like I said, it took this. By the time we got to the second half, I had settled in. I was doing what I was supposed to do, and wasn't just off. And it was really a physical second half of football.
It was.
Well, what were your coaches telling you to keep y'all motivated? Coach Dooley, what were you telling your players to keep them motivated through this type of physical game?
One more time, I guess. We've got to stop it one more time. I feel for you, but I can't reach you. Going out there, stop them one more time. That's all you can say. Yeah, and you could hear the contact on the sideline. It was a physical second half, particularly, and we were hanging. There's no question about it. And then when it was over, there was this sea of red. I don't think Notre Dame people ever saw crazy people like Georgia all running out on the field. And I made the statement: if you'd have waited 75 years to finally win a national championship, you might have understood it a little better. But Notre Dame had won so many by then. My one regret, I couldn't find Coach Devine because traditionally the coaches come out, and it was just a mass.
Crazy.
But I was able to call him the next morning and visited with him on the phone and apologized to him. It was impossible. It was just, and it was quite a celebration.
Oh, it was crazy. But that particular year, we had 2 themes: big team, little me. And if Coach Russell would have trademarked that, like Pat Riley did with three-peat, he would have been a multimillionaire. But Coach Russell just come up with these themes. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And the other one was one more time, because we won the first one, so we could win another one. And in that year, credit to the coaches. This is, I think, where your leadership really, really made a difference. I think you knew you had a good core of seniors, and you knew how to influence their thinking. And that year, y'all made sure that we took one game at a time. And it made us believe it really is, that you're not good enough to win unless you play your best. And we almost screwed up in the Florida game because we didn't play our best.
Well, we had a schedule that was really demanding if you thought about it now. And we played South Carolina the week before, and George Rogers won the Heisman Trophy. Right. And they were good.
Yeah.
It was a heck of a game. Then we had to go play Florida, and they were good. Then we played Auburn, and they're always good. All those games were in a row. I think the one thing that I did, usually we try to set some team rules on, training rules on going to a bowl, and I'll let you all set them, if you remember that. Mm-hmm. And then when you gave them to me, I thought they were quite liberal.
You got the seniors together.
about Well, let's see. The first night we're going to be 3 o'clock in the morning on Bourbon Street, and looking at that. And the next night at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then finally at 12, and then down to 11, and then at 10 o'clock after that. But so anyway, I kind of made a commitment. I was going to let y'all get very much involved in it, and I sucked it up.
Yeah, well, there was a logic behind what we did. It really was. The first night was the only night we were asked for a real late curfew, and we felt like, we're here to win, and nobody had been there. Remember, this team had never been to the Sugar Bowl, and so we thought the idea is let these guys get out of their system the first night, and we won't be the example. In other words, hey. And I think the second night we actually said, no curfew first night. I think we said. And I think the second night we started at 12, and then after that was 10. And so but the idea was
maybe it was the first night, no curfew.
No curfew. Yeah, I think it probably got your, and I think you ended up saying 3 o'clock. I think what you ended up agreeing with. But that was the logic behind that. But that year, back to my point, he really had us believing every game that if we didn't play to our best, we just weren't going to win. And I'll give you an example against Vanderbilt. We had the coach that gives us the scouting report on Sunday afternoons, remember? And they came in there and made it sound like Vanderbilt had these 6'4", 250-pound fullbacks running 4.3 40s. I mean, that's the way he presented to us. These guys, and this is Vanderbilt, which at the time wasn't a very good program. And we bought into that mentality that, God, I guess we're not good enough just to step out there and make mistakes. And we would carry that on. And so that one more time theme and the team me, the team's bigger than I am. And the Sugar Bowl, I got a great picture that Earl Leonard, he was my mentor at Coca-Cola, has hanging on his wall. It's me and Nate Taylor on the sideline with probably about a minute or something to go, probably a little more than that, before our last series. And we were exhausted, and you can see it. I mean, we're leaned over, and Coach Russell's leaned over, and basically what he was saying is, he used to call me ROS. He thought it was funny I didn't have a second S, and didn't call me Frank or Ross. And he said, ROS, can you go one more time? And that's his thing, just one more time. And of course, you look at him, and how could you not, get inspired to go in one more time? But that's a picture you can see, as you can tell, you were good at that point.
Another interesting thing I thought about this team, and you mentioned Nate Taylor. Mm-hmm. I believe we had 4 walk-ons that were starters in that ball game. Nate Taylor was one. Robert Miles was another. Mike Fisher was another. Who was the other? Was that Dale Williams?
Dale Williams was one, and there's one. And obviously, there was 5, if I remember correctly. You had Miles, Nate, Fisher, and then you had, and then Bob was second team. He was a walk-on.
Yeah.
He'd come in as a walk-on also.
Yeah.
We had 4 starters
that
were walk-ons. So it's kind of interesting that we weren't the most talented. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I think we played good together, good core, good character guys. But he wouldn't agree after we killed the pig. Tell me a story about when you went to approach the head of the agriculture department and how you, as soon as you said what you said, you realized it was not going to sound very good.
No, it was a delicate situation. So I was talking to the head of that department where the pig was, and he was quite mad. And so I was trying to explain to him, I said, now these are 4 or 5 of the very best, and I thought about it because they really were the best guys we had. And I said, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, you're in a hell of a shape if those are the 4 best leaders you got on your team. And I don't blame you for saying that. So I got myself into it. I didn't know how to get out of it. But y'all were, and y'all handled it pretty good. And you did a great job of painting the wall, which we appreciate.
Yeah, it was a hot year. That was just one of the punishments, but yeah.
All right. So talking about the second half, it's a tight game. It's a very physical game. How confident are you on each of your sidelines? Do you think you can hold on and win, or do you think you can come back to win this game?
I'll tell you, we didn't think we were going to. We didn't think we were going to lose until the pass, until we completed
Finally
the pass.
completed the pass, yeah.
You know,
to keep the ball.
Yeah, we thought we thought we just kept thinking we just need the ball back one more time. They haven't stopped us. So this is our mentality. They haven't stopped us yet. We've stopped ourselves. We just get the ball back and we can score. That was our mentality. I remember thinking that. And then I jokingly tell people that Buck Bellew was 0 for October, except he completed the one pass. And you're right, it was the one important one, and that shut the door on us. So I remember that. I remember that play specifically, and thinking, that's it, we're done.
Yeah, because it was just kept coming back, and we were not getting as strong as we hopefully would be in the fourth quarter. I think we were wearing down, and they kept coming and throwing the football, and each series like that, you thought this might be the series that they're going to score, because we kind of shut down offensively, and Notre Dame shut us down as well, and it just it became that just one more time.
Yeah.
In fact, I think right there at the end when Buck completed that pass, you were standing next to me on the sideline.
Yeah, I got a good story about that.
Yeah, you were trying to celebrate with about 10 seconds left.
No, I wasn't trying to celebrate. I knew I was standing next to him towards the end of the game because the defense was on the sideline, and I knew that when we completed that pass, there was no timeouts left in Notre Dame, so we could just literally run the clock out. And I knew Coach Dooley's conservative is we're not going to do anything stupid. We're going to kneel down or whatever. And so I looked at Coach Dooley, and if you see a picture of him, he's intense. I mean, his face is red. I mean, just kind of his eyes swollen, and I go up to him and said, Coach, I think I said we got him or we've won. And you looked at me and said a few choice words and said, no, it's not over until the clock says 0-0. And that's when I said, Coach, they can't stop the clock. And you kind of managed a quick grin, but then got serious. He said, it don't matter, it's not 0-0. So I had to wait another 20 seconds to hug him because, you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I wasn't going to let you win the argument.
Well, hey, I wasn't going to argue with you.
So the game's basically over. Let's talk about the aftermath. We mentioned a minute ago, Georgia fans spill out onto the field. What were your thoughts as the sea of people came down out of the stands? What was the Notre Dame? What were your thoughts?
Oh, it was so loud. I remember when it hit 0-0, it got so loud in there. And then you're right, the sea of red onto the field. I remember that, and then getting off the field. And I really don't remember much after that until my folks were staying at the hotel right across from the Superdome, and so we were at I think we were at the Sheraton down on Poydras Street, but they were staying across, and I remember going to their hotel with them, and it was just packed with people. It was all Georgia fans, and I'll never forget that. It's the first time I heard "How About Them Dogs." That was the first time.
Really?
Yeah. And I've heard it a bunch since.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
But standing in this packed elevator, waiting to get in the elevator to go up to my parents' hotel room. I felt rotten like you did. I was just so spent after the game and had a terrible headache, and probably because I was dehydrated as well. And that's what I remember. And then I heard a lot of "How About Them Dogs" on Bourbon Street that night.
Did you go out there?
Yeah, I did. I made it out. I did better than you.
I tried. It's embarrassing even
I did better than you. Yeah,
it's about that time that How About Them Dogs got
more
right going. The Sugar Bowl had a real challenge because I think the 2 days before the game, Jimmy Carter was the president at the time and short-term president. He had a lot of Georgia people that worked for him that wanted to go to the game. So he calls up and tells them they need 250 tickets. Well, you can imagine the demand for tickets at that, and then all of a sudden 2 days before, you get a call from the President of the United States that you need 250 more. So they had to create some tickets somehow or another. But I always thought about that, that kind of a panic 2 days before the ball game. I don't know where they put them, but
I never heard that story.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
250.
Good Lord.
That they wanted to come. So what are you going to tell the president? We don't have any. So they created 250 tickets somewhere for him.
Yeah, I'll show it to you. I'll have to dig it up out of the attic. But a lady from Albany, Georgia, you may remember her name. I can't think of her name.
Dee Matthews?
Dee Matthews. I can't believe you remember that.
Well, I can't forget her.
She was a fanatic, just fanatic. And for some reason, she had clicked. Back then, of course, you didn't have cell phones, just little cameras. And she'd click like literally as quick as she could click, and had a series of when the fans started coming on the field. And one day in the mail, I get this box about like that, and it's the stack of photos that she had taken. And I guess she made copies and got other players some, but I still have them, and you show it. I mean, all of a sudden, before you know it, the whole 100 yards, the whole field, not just part of it, the whole field is all red and black. And I was wondering how y'all got off the field, because one of the regrets I had, I never got a chance to even shake one of the players' hands, because when the clock went out, we picked you up on my shoulders, me and Charlie Dean. We tried to take you to Dan Devine. We couldn't find Coach Devine. And then we put you down, and we tried to get back. It was a nightmare. But I'll show you one day. It's amazing. It's just crazy. I don't know how y'all got back to the locker room.
I really don't even remember, actually. I just don't even remember. You know, that was one of the things that I always liked to do after games, was run up and shake the opposing coach's hands. But it was just to see. I just remember. I don't even think I tried to, because I was just in awe of how loud it was, and how fast the sea of red just moved onto the field. Coach, my daughter, after watching the video, she said, "Dad, how was it to fumble in front of President Jimmy Carter?"
No, she didn't.
Yeah, she said that to me on Sunday morning. I said, "Sweetie, come on."
How old was your daughter?
She's 14. She's a tough critic.
Yeah, two times she's criticized you. We got to talk to her.
Critic. She said, "How was it to fumble in front of Jimmy Carter?" I said, I didn't even know he was there. We're crying out loud.
We were talking about after the game, Coach Dooley remembered this, because Coach Dooley was back in the old days. You know, there was a very big line of respect between your head coach and the players, and normally you don't speak unless you're spoken to, and that's just the way it was. And we accepted, and that's the way it was. And after the game, when we finally got into the locker room, because he couldn't get there, it was crazy. We ended up body surfing you. Remember that?
Yeah.
We got him up, and at that point, what's he gonna do? We're leaving. Yeah, the hell with it. We surfed him, and you having a great time. And I remember you were celebrating. But that's about what I remember. And then back then, security was almost. It was weird. I look in the locker room. One of my high school assistant coaches had gotten in there, and he, of course, had been nipping. And with one of his friends, I'm thinking, how'd they get in here? And then next thing you know, you see other people in the locker room. And so I finally go take a shower, and I come back, and my jersey's gone. And I'm looking around, so I asked the manager, I said, y'all pick up everybody's jersey to take back? No, everybody. And so to this day, I don't know where that jersey's at, but didn't have security for the most part.
Look on eBay. It might.
Yeah, nobody wants to buy it. That's probably never sold. But that's how it was back then. Nowadays, no way somebody get in the locker room.
Well, gentlemen, we just have a few minutes left, so kind of want to get your final impressions. What are your final thoughts about this game, things that you've carried with you through the years, or anything that you've thought about saying but we didn't have a chance to cover? Coach Dooley, start with you.
Well, so much has been said, and it's how many years has it been now?
37.
30-something, yeah. Which is hard to believe, but that's how time goes by. Of course, it was an incredible moment for Georgia, and because there was no really national championship. There was the 42 team that really didn't even claim the national championship until we came and did some research and we started claiming it. So it was the first undisputed national champion. And I guess the good reflection of it all is that this fella here has kept that group together, and they have an extraordinary, extra special group, particularly in light of the fact that how they were able to win somehow, some way, each and every week, which was quite a challenge. And it's finally now Notre Dame, Georgia will get to see Notre Dame. And Georgia people love to travel, and particularly to go to South Bend. And the fact that there's so many of them going. I've never in all of my life associated with Georgia at a game where there's so many people that are going away to a game that want tickets that are not going to have them. So it'll be an exciting weekend for them.
I mean, to me, it's been an incredible honor that I even got the opportunity to play at Georgia. And he, it's Coach Dooley that's one that saw something in me, because I wasn't highly recruited. I mean, I had a couple of schools looking at me, and then it was during my career that he saw something in me, and one day he said, "Put him in there, see what he can do." Kind of a backhanded compliment, but it worked out. But the privilege was playing with the kind of guys that I played with. I mean, we all bought into something, which is the hardest thing to get a human to do, is to put themselves second to the good of a group. And then to finish my career playing against, obviously, a storied program like Notre Dame. I mean, that's where I dreamed of playing when I was a little kid. And to be able to complete my career against Notre Dame and win the national championship on top of that, I mean, I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world, and just the relationships that we've had and built over the years. So it's great to go back and reminisce about it. But life goes on, and now it's these young guys' turn to make history for themselves.
You're right. And for me, I think the takeaway points are how special it was to play in the game. I still tell people to this day that got a chance to play against Herschel Walker, the greatest college football player of all time, and I also leadership lessons learned from an opportunity squandered. I think I've turned those around and used them in my life. It's arrogance breeds complacency, and don't deviate from the plan no matter what happens. And those are some of the things that I think led to us not closing the deal. But I think especially now I'm having the conversation today that we've had today, realize why we weren't able to close the deal. It was against a team of high character, maybe not as necessarily as high profile people as other teams in the country, but high character individuals that had been there before, that knew how to get it done. And we just couldn't, we ran up against a team that was better than us. And that's what I take away from it.
All right. Well, gentlemen, on behalf of the Special Collections Libraries, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been really fun and entertaining, and I think educational as well. So thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you being part of this program.
Thank you.
Thank you.